Fantastic. Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us, talking through the mentoring programme that we've set up at Royal Cornwall Hospitals, and then we spread it out across the Cornwalls and our Scilly finance teams. So I'm Karen Jarvel, I'm the Associate Director of Finance, and I didn't give any recognition to the other two people that are presenting as part of this, which is Ian Dean, sorry Ian, and Sam. So Ian Dean is our Deputy Director of Finance, and Sam Parks, who's a Deputy Finance Manager. So what we agreed to do for this session is to talk to you about the mentoring programme that we've set up, how we went about setting it up. We'll be able to circulate the slides following this session, which will have the embedded documents, so that if you want to set up your own mentoring programme and you want to pinch any of our forms or guidance and turn it into your own, then hopefully it'll give you something as a starter for 10. Yeah, and just talk you through kind of hopefully a success story. You'll hear from Ian and Sam about how it's worked from a mentor's point of view, and then a mentee's point of view. Okay, Becky, if you want to go to the next slide. Thank you. So we were quite conscious that we didn't have a mentoring programme within the department. Back in 2020, we were going through our accreditation level 1 for FFF, and we were talking about mentoring and how we support our trainees and all of our students across the department, and became kind of really obvious that actually nobody had a formal mentor, and actually as much as it is possible to get a mentor through other means such as HFMA, we decided we'd quite like to have one developed internally. So we reached out and asked if anybody else across various organisations had a mentoring programme up and running that maybe we could pitch and set up and use to kind of set something up quick and easy. There wasn't anything out there when we asked around, so we went about setting up our own programme, which is what I want to talk you through today. So we set up a little small working group of people to have a look at what we'd need to put in place to set up a mentoring programme, so that people were really clear on what mentoring is, what benefits they could get out of it, who it's appropriate for, and to set up some forms to put a process in place so that we could be really clear on who's a mentor, who's a mentee, what the expectations are of that relationship. So the working group developed 4 documents, which I'll talk you through this presentation. So the guidance, application forms for both mentors and mentees, the contract, which sounds formal, but really it's just a kind of a form to follow to start the conversations, and a 1-page profile for mentors. Thanks, Becky. We'll do next slide. So the guidance. So what we decided to put into the guidance was an overview around the mentoring relationship and what mentoring is. When we spoke to quite a few staff, they struggled to understand kind of the difference between mentoring and coaching, sponsorship, all these various options that people have out there. So we've tried to articulate what a mentoring relationship is when you are joining this mentoring programme. So it's the heavy focus we talked about originally was around support for students, but then we have talked about general career progression for people as well. So that's kind of what we've built our mentoring programme around, and with it being internal, it will be limited for depending on the skills, experience and the people that we've got available to be mentors. So we've described that and talked about when you might put a mentoring relationship in place. That's within the document. We've clearly articulated what the roles and responsibilities of mentor and a mentee are. So it's very clear around who should be doing what in that relationship, who should lead the sessions, how you set your time, confidentiality. That type of thing is described in that document. The process of how to get involved, so how you go about applying to become either a mentor or a mentee, and then what happens as part of that process, so the group that reviews those forms, how you then start your sessions. So it's a reasonably short document to try and keep it simple, but we thought we'd have to put something in place to put some structure around the mentoring programme. Something that the team decided to put into this document was something called a mentor competencies questionnaire, which has been designed by Coaching and Mentoring International. And this is quite a useful document for somebody who's not sure whether they want to be a mentor or what they can bring to a mentoring relationship. And there's lots of different questions you can work yourself through. It's a self-assessment, so you don't have to do it with anybody. You sit on your own and have a look at it, and you score yourself out of 1 to 5. That's within the document, so you'll see it when the presentation is shared with people. But what you can do with that is you can have a look at your scores depending on what you self-reflect within that, to have a look at actually it might identify areas for you to develop for yourself if you're thinking about a mentoring relationship yourself. But actually what it should do is help you look at where you maybe score yourself as quite high and achieving quite well and having kind of experience in certain areas, which can then help you look at what you can offer to somebody else as a mentor. So they're very clear in the coaching and mentoring international paperwork around this questionnaire that there isn't a pass or a fail. It really is a self-reflection and just about learning something about yourself and what you can bring as a mentor. But they do recommend that somebody needs to get kind of circa 50% in most sections. So we don't ask to see anybody's scores. That really is just for people to have a look at if they're querying whether they could be a mentor or not. But we have mentors at in various roles. So it's not just for senior people to be mentors. We have mentors that have come in as an apprentice and achieved their first level of AAT and got their first substantive role, and they've become a mentor for another apprentice. So, you know, very early on in their careers, very early on in their studies. But you know, we've supported them to be mentors for others, as probably more appropriate for people that haven't sat AAT recently and know less about how to support somebody through AAT. So we're not too kind of we don't feel too strong about kind of people doing that, but it's just in there just for people to do some self-reflection if they want. Thank you, Becky. So application forms. So the application forms are quite straightforward. We ask for people's names, job titles, and then why they want to either be a mentor or why they're applying for a mentoring relationship. People don't have to be specific and say why they want a mentoring relationship, because it might be quite personal. But if they can do, then actually it can help the people that assess those forms. There's a small team that assess these forms to have a look at how they could match a mentor to a mentee appropriately. So it is requested, but you don't have to specifically say it. And then a mentor needs to be able to demonstrate, this is the most important part of this form, that they're achieving in their current role within trust values and behaviours. So we're really clear that we only want, obviously, as we all would, want an appropriately behaved and achieving mentor to be a mentor. So those that lead by their appropriate behaviours will be mentors for others. Again, it's a self-filling in form, so it's what you believe. So, but that's assessed as part of that process. Thank you, Becky. And then there's a form for a contract. So this is where a mentor and a mentee can use this piece of paper to form their first conversation. So it's the start of building their relationship, where you can talk about how you want to use your time together, what time you're going to commit together, how you're going to interact. So you're going to meet online, you're going to meet face to face. What kind of areas do you want to cover? Who's got the responsibilities for which parts of that relationship, such as setting the meetings? And then clearly something around confidentiality. So being really explicit about that relationship and what comes out of that being extremely confidential for both sides. And each session you would look at what remains confidential, or if somebody's allowed to kind of take certain actions out of that meeting and it doesn't remain confidential, or if that should be clear in each session. So that form supports that first conversation and sets hopefully the ground rules for the relationship going forward. Okay. Thanks, Becky. So what we set up was a one-page profile. So we've asked anybody who's applied to be a mentor to fill in a one-page summary, which will have a photo so somebody recognises them, especially because not everybody is in the office working on site anymore. So it's quite handy to recognise that person if you see them around and about, or you can then have a look at who's a mentor, see who's available. You have a brief summary of what this person's about, a little bit about personally who they are, what they do outside of work maybe, a bit of the career history, what qualifications they've got, how they achieved what they achieved, why you want to be a mentor. And then, you know, if you want to put in some kind of fun quotes and things like that. So it's just a bit of a summary so that as a mentee, you can have a look and see what the mentors are all about. So if you're studying AAT and that's what you want support about, you can have a look and see which mentors might be appropriate for you to kind of link in with. So when you fill in your application form, you can ask for a specific mentor if you want to. So yeah, it's just a bit of a fun way to summarise a mentor and who they are and what they're about. Thanks, Becky. So summary of the actual process, and then we'll move on to Ian and Sam to talk about their relationship and how this has worked for them. So all mentors will be reviewed by a small group of people that set up this process to check that they're appropriate. They add their details onto a directory so mentees can see who's available. Mentees fill in the forms and they get matched where appropriate. We have made it mandatory at Royal Cornwall to have a mentor if you're studying, so that you have got some support. And we opened this programme out across Pernod ICB. And so it's a joint programme across the two organisations, which is really good. Currently, we've got about 19 mentors available and 22 mentees. And like I mentioned previously, quite a few mentees are becoming mentors, such as our old apprentices that are coming through, getting substantive roles, and then becoming really useful mentors for those new apprentices we've got coming in. Thanks, Becky. Mr. Dean.
Thank you, Karen. Really good run through what we've set up there. So just before, I don't know if you've got the next slide, Becky. So as Karen said, I'm Deputy Director of Finance at Royal Cornwall Hospitals, and actually was very much just a participant of this. It was very much led by Karen and the team that she's described, the small working group that set it up and established it and put it all in place. So it really was led by, you know, it came out of one of our staff groups in terms of people seeing the need for this. There's a couple of bits just in what Karen said before I get into the bits on the slide there. One of which I think is the one-page profiles were really well received. So I think what people could get quite quickly from those one-page profiles is kind of people's approach that they'd taken. So my approach to studying and becoming qualified is very different from other people in the department. And as Karen said, it's about getting the right person to match what you're wanting from a mentor. So actually, from my perspective, filling that in, applying for that in the same way was quite an interesting process to reflect on your individual personal career path, and how that differs. Because there wouldn't be any point in me mentoring somebody that's, you know, just doing their AAT qualification. So I never did my AAT qualification. I went straight in and did a CCAB qualification when I joined the NHS as a trainee, and so it's not an area that I know about, and it was a long time ago. So probably far less relevant for those people than somebody like Karen described that's just done it quite recently. So in terms of from my experience, through my career I've benefited from having mentors myself, and looking at it from my perspective with this relationship, it's a different challenge. It really does help. So I think often people think it's only the mentee that gets something out of a relationship. It's definitely not. From my experience, it's a part of my job I really enjoy. I think it helps me in terms of my ability to listen and listen properly to what people are saying to me, to question and to give me a different perspective, because often, you know, in your day job, you'll be involved in particular things, in particular forums, and you'll see it through a particular lens. And actually having a mentee reflecting back to you what's going on in their world and how it feels and how they reflect similar experiences, whether that be remote working through COVID or you know, other bits and pieces. I really enjoy sharing my experiences, but I'm really conscious of doing that as a guide and not as a prescribed approach. So often in the discussions, there might be a reflection of a particular issue that somebody's grappling with, or a particular setback that they've had, and you can draw as a mentor, you can draw on your own experiences from that. But I'm always very conscious of using that as an option, but also encouraging people to speak to others and see what others would do in that scenario. the thing I really enjoy about it, and the thing I think I bring to the relationship, is that ability to facilitate opportunities, and that's probably, on reflection, that's probably easier for me as a deputy director of finance than it would be for a more junior member of staff mentoring, say, one of our apprentices. But it is something that, you know, we encourage actively for everybody to try and do. So that might be things such as attending formal committees, and just helping people join the dots of how their role fits into a bigger picture of the department and the organisation at large. It's really important from my perspective as a mentor to give it the ring fence time and high priority, as people on this call appreciate. Your diary will be filled with important things, and it would be really easy for the mentoring meetings to become that thing that, you know, you cancel every time. Sam, before he says it, I will admit to it, I do occasionally change it. And we, you know, we have a conversation when we do that, to make sure that we get it back in the diary as soon as possible. But when we're in that, you know, not having the distractions of Teams popping up and emails going off, and really being in that conversation. And actually, it's really useful to do it face to face as well, even in the current environment. That's probably more important, I think, now. The other bit that's really important for my learning is keep reflecting back to the mentee that it's still working and it's what their need is, and it's meeting the need. Because, as I said, you know, what works at one point in your career might not be what you need at the next point, and it might be, and there might come a point when you know, that relationship between a mentor and a mentee is at the point where it's run its natural course. And I think it's really important, and I try and do that regularly, is give that opportunity to say, is this still working? You know, it doesn't matter if it's not. We can, you know, we can go and do different relationships now and get different benefits from that. So making sure we're doing that. And I think probably the biggest by far benefit for me as a mentor is seeing that development of the individual that you're mentoring, through all of their hard work. And Sam's a prime example, so I will embarrass Sam in front of everybody. But Sam's a prime example. Since I've been working with Sam, I've really seen how he's applied himself, both academically in terms of progressing through his exams, in terms of his SEMA qualification, but also through his work life, and more recently becoming a deputy finance manager following a successful recruitment process. And that's, for me, that, you know, that cuts across everything else. If I get nothing else from it on a personal level, that kind of benefit of seeing people develop and seeing their confidence grow, and ultimately one day hopefully Sam will be sat here doing this as deputy director of finance when I'm long since retired. So yeah, that's really good. The other bit that Sam and I got out of the relationship is actually a bit of a social side of things as well. So through the discussions, we established we both like playing badminton. Sam's also introduced me to squash, which is quite a bit more tiring than badminton, I have to say. So we do try and fit in an occasional social game of badminton or squash. Depending on who wants to win, we choose which one we do. Sam wins the squash, I win the badminton, generally speaking. But even on that sort of thing, you know, connecting with people on a different level as well, you know, outside of work, with things like that has been really useful as well. So yeah, they're probably my main reflections. I'll hand over to Sam, and then obviously we can take questions at the end.
Well, thanks, Ian. That's very kind words, and as always, you're a hard act to follow. I don't have any slide sort of notes to share, but I just wanted to sort of touch on my experience as a mentee. As Ian has touched on, I'm the deputy finance manager at the finance team at Trelisk. And yeah, I just wanted to talk to you from a mentee perspective, talk about what I've got from the scheme, what skills and experiences I've picked up along the way. So back in 2020, many of us were made the shift from an office-based environment to more of a virtual environment. And some people naturally found this transition a lot easier than others. I was very much one of those people that found the change very challenging. I was used to seeing and interacting with colleagues on a daily basis, and then virtually overnight found myself working in isolation, in silence, and just feeling isolated from colleagues, and also isolated a little bit outside of work as well. So yeah, this is something that really affected my self-confidence, actually. And it wasn't something that I'd noticed sort of overnight. It was more of a gradual process. I hadn't appreciated or recognised the signs until it was too late, really. And as a natural introvert, I found it difficult to engage in conversations over Teams, and often afraid to have the spotlight on me and raise my hand in a meeting, even though I felt like I had something worthwhile to contribute to it. So this all led me to seek experiences and kind of get out of my comfort zone, I suppose, and sort of help provide stepping stones to gradually rebuild my contributions in meetings and restore my feeling of self-confidence. So that's ultimately why I joined the mentor scheme back in May 21. So I suppose when talking about what I've got out of the scheme so far, the first thing to touch on really is personal accountability. And essentially the programme has compelled me to reflect on why I had negative experiences, and also encouraged me to become accountable to myself and realise that I was responsible for my own development. The self-assessment helped me to understand what I was good at and what I wasn't naturally good at, where I had identified those development opportunities, taking ownership of those and actively seeking exposure to those experiences. So I've been working in the management accounts team for a number of years. I hadn't really touched on the income side of our finance team at all. So one of the development opportunities I identified was to learn more about how income worked in the trust. So I arranged to join the income team in their weekly team meetings and attended their annual operating plan meetings, where they discussed the activity plans for the trust and progress of the care groups to deliver against that activity. It really helps my knowledge, and this knowledge has given me more confidence to ask and answer related questions. The other thing I got from the scheme was the way in which my mentor has been instrumental in providing a network of support, skills and experiences that I didn't have access to. As Ian's already touched on, one of the standout examples for me was to sit and observe a finance and performance committee meeting. Observing this really helps me to appreciate that exec directors and non-exec directors are just regular people and aren't as scary as I built them up to be in my head. It allowed me to appreciate how the information that I deliver to my managers gradually feeds itself up the chain and how it fits into the wider picture of the trust as a whole. As Ian's already mentioned, I'm currently studying to become a fully qualified accountant. And yeah, having that sort of support network that Ian has had access to has really helped me, not only to have a chat about, my experiences with studying and to be a bit of a rock in that sense, but also to help pick me up, because naturally, we all have failures. And just help me to sort of pick myself up and dust myself off to give it another go. So yeah, that's ultimately a lot of the experiences that I've got out of the mentor scheme, I suppose. Only losing at badminton several times as well. So yeah, I'm just really looking forward to what's next, I suppose, and yeah, looking forward to what opportunities this could effectively open up for me in the future.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks, Becky. So thanks, Sam, for being so open and honest and sharing your personal experience. Really appreciate it. And for an introvert, you did excellent. So well done. quite scary to do these sessions. So thank you very much. So yeah, so open to the floor really for any questions about the mentoring scheme. Like I say, the forms that we've used are all within the presentation that we'll share, so anybody can use those if you want to, if it's any help for supporting a mentoring programme in your own organisation if you haven't already got one. But yeah, open to questions if there are any. Deathly silence. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, I'm from the Northern Care Alliance, so Greater Manchester type area. I'm interested to know how many people were interested in joining up to either be a mentee or a mentor. Did you get quite a lot of interest?
Yeah, we did. We had a surge of probably 10 out of the 20 plus we had put the hands up first of all, so quite a few people filled in the kind of one pagers and asked to be mentors, and then we went back out again and kind of pushed again a little bit because people just get busy being busy, don't they? And it was just another email that landed, so we kind of re-promoted it. And then I think what's grown since then has been we've gone to people specifically and said, have you considered being a mentor? So especially for the apprentices that have come through into kind of a permanent role, you know, we've specifically approached them to say, actually, we think you'd be fantastic to support this next apprentice to come through. I mean, it's still an option. We've not forced anybody's hand to do it yet, because we've had sufficient mentors to do it. But yeah, we did get quite a good take up, and I think part of that is just because we let them get on with their own relationship. So you know, we kind of hand it over. But yeah, it was a reasonable. It wasn't as high as I expected it to be, but you know, maybe I've got high expectations. But
we see it being really beneficial for us in our organisation. We're quite a large organisation, so I thought, you know, this is something that would be really useful for particularly our students. And I'm a business accountant level, so it'd be great for me as well in terms of my career progression, having opportunities like this.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, sounds really good.
And what was nice is when we opened it up and linked in with the ICB, and hopefully we'll do the same with the Mental Health Trust over the coming months as well, that, you know, if you can across Cornwall go and be mentored by anybody else across the system, I think is just, you know, it's another benefit to understand what happens in those other organisations and just widen that knowledge and the kind of networks across Cornwall. So so we've done it with ICB, and we'll hopefully be doing it with CFT as well. So that's another benefit, that as a system you can do it as well.
Thanks, I think it's just to follow on from that, Karen, it's kind of grown. I think, as Karen said, Melanie, it's certain people felt like they could be a mentor to start with, probably because they'd had a mentor in the past and they knew what it involved, but lots of the department didn't have the first idea what it meant. So actually having a bit of a framework that explains that, and as Karen says, once you start to explain to people the fact that, you know, you were an apprentice, you've now got a substantive job, that makes you really valuable to a new apprentice, and people suddenly clock that, oh yeah, actually I could do that, and it's not, you know, the big scary mentoring thing that, you know, you're signing yourself up for. Once you realise what it actually entails, because Sam, for example, is a mentor as well, aren't you, Sam, as a mentee? So effectively passing on some of what Sam's learnt and his experiences on downwards, so you can have it where people do both roles as well, which is really useful.
Yeah, sounds excellent. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Melanie. Sarah, reading your question in the chat, how did you go about matching mentees and mentors? Who did the matching, and what parts of the application did you use to determine who you thought would be the right fit? The forms go to one person who's got oversight of the whole programme, and she discusses, if needed, she discusses that with the other people that set up the whole programme. There's 3 people that develop the forms. So mainly we try to match people with, if they're asking for study support, we try to match them with people that have recently done those types of qualifications if we can, and try and match it if people have been specific about what they want with what we know about the mentors. Sorry, got a dodgy phone call. So that's the approach we've taken. But not everybody, to be honest, has been specific about what they want, and what we do is offer them a choice of mentors 2 or 3 that are available and just send them the one-page summaries back and let them choose who they would like to work with. And sometimes people they've already decided who they want to work with. I don't know whether that happened with you, did this, Sam? Sometimes people approach the mentor before and say, this is who I want, and this mentor's agreed that with me. So yeah, it varies, to be honest. But we have had people say that they don't want a certain mentor, which is fine, and we change it. So we've done that as well. Yeah, Ian was the only one that was left, supposedly, according to him, which is why Sam got lumped with him and to play sports. Did somebody else have their hand up? Did I miss that?
Oops. Hello, it was me. Yeah, Maria.
Hi, Maria.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I just wonder, how did you manage to persuade the mentors to join the program? Is well, nowadays everybody seems to be very busy and struggling to complete work. So how did they balance that act in between trying to mentor someone and at the same time to complete their own task within the role?
So I think genuinely there was 10 or 11 people that just put the hand up and have experienced mentoring themselves, so understand that it's kind of worth the time and investment, and to kind of get the gains that Ian described as part of his slide, really around the benefits, knowing that when you've experienced that, you want to be able to support somebody else to do that. So that was part of it. Some of it is because people are just in senior roles and know how important it is to support our staff to come through, and that's part of our retention. We have a pretty good retention rate within the department, and we have good successes for internal promotion. Sam being a shining example of that. That, you know, if we can support and develop our own and grow our own, then our vacancy numbers stay low, which is a benefit to all. So I think a lot of people were quite aware of those benefits already, or have done it. And like I say, since then, we've tried to get kind of with targeted people, and so somebody who's just come into a substantive role from an apprenticeship actually might have a bit more capacity to support somebody else through mentoring their AAT. You know, they seem to have just found the time and understood how difficult it was, and they have those catch-ups with those types of people anyway sometimes. So yeah, nobody's flagged that it's been an issue or held back by workload, but I'm sure there are moments like Ian's described where people say, oh God, I can't do it this week, but can we rearrange it? But nobody's escalated that at the moment, so we've been lucky, really.
And in terms of commitment, Maria, it's a relatively low level of commitment, and I say that in the nicest possible way. But you know, so Sam and I, for example, we meet probably once every couple of months for an hour. It's more about once you've, so we met more frequently initially, probably as we were forming it, but certainly now, you know, a few years on, it's very much having it regularly in the diary every 2 to 3 months. It's only an hour, which, you know, even in a diary as busy as mine, that's perfectly easy to accommodate. But also it's more the fact that it gives Sam and I the option just to catch up at any point if we need to, even that's just go and grab lunch together, or, you know, walk over to a meeting together, whatever it might be. So I think something is about making it clear that it's not a huge time commitment to get that engagement when you're launching it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Maria. I can't see any more questions in the chat. And no other. So if there's no other questions, then we'll let everybody get half an hour time back into their diary. And Becky will be able to circulate the slides, which has the documents embedded within them. Is that right, Becky? Everybody that's attended, thank you. Is there anything else we need to do, Becky, for this session?
No, that's it. Everyone will get the slides and the recording.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for your time.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.